How do you get around the fact that his insurance was not in force? And let's define what that means. He had missed a payment.
Correct.
Was he within that 30-day grace period?
What happened was Mr. De Silva was under assumption that all of his payments going to be automatically withdrawn from his account. And apparently his insurance agent, who told him that that's how it's going to be set up, was not able to do it that way. And Mr. De Silva did not realize that the payments have not been withdrawn by the insurance company, and therefore his insurance lapsed about 2 weeks before this incident. So fortunately for us, we were able to convince his insurance company to reinstate his policy, because the failure to pay was not, was due to the insurance agent not doing their job.
Right. And they were aware of the accident already.
Of course.
Because many of them would say, well, it's tough luck,
And as you know, in California, if you don't have insurance and you get hurt, you're not entitled to receive any damages for pain and suffering, so to speak. You're only limited to your medical bills and wage loss, which in this case would have made prosecuting this case almost impossible.
Now, many people who watch this show maybe have, let's say, dubious immigrant status. They could be here illegally. One of the reasons we like doing shows like this is because anybody who sets foot on American soil that gets injured has the same rights as a citizen, don't they?
Absolutely.
To pursue justice, correct?
Absolutely. And this is what happened in this case. Mr. De Silva was a legal immigrant, but he had the same right and protection afforded under the law as any other person or citizen would be in this country. The only thing that he was not entitled to receive is compensation for inability to work in the future. That's something that if you're not a citizen here, or if not, you're not a legal resident, you are not allowed to seek compensation for inability to work in this country.
What did you discover about the trucking company? Some of the safety violations that they had in effect?
Well, it was a very long way, and it took a lot of work and interesting depositions and discovery to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
What turned out to be the truth during trial, and some of this thing came out during trial, is that there were some severe violations of federal rules and regulations that are applied to the gasoline trucking companies that our government hasn't enforced. And one of the main rules is that the driver cannot be fatigued and cannot work over a certain amount of hours. And that rule is enforced because the statistics show that when the driver is fatigued and works too many hours, they are prone to have accidents, and they don't have as much attention as they should. And in this particular case, it turned out that the driver had another second job, which he was required to report to his superior, but he decided not to record it in his hours. And of course, his supervisor knew that he had another job, but somehow he didn't insist that this should be recorded. The other violation that there were many questions that were asked about the trucking company. For example, there was an incident report prepared by the driver, which was required immediately after the incident, and somehow this report disappeared and was never produced. It turned out during trial that it was not just one copy or several copies of the report that were prepared, and all the copies disappeared. For example, the driver was required to get tested for drugs and alcohol within a certain amount of hours after the incident, and it turned out that never happened. We had a truck, had a GPS system installed that would have helped us to determine the speed, for example. And the speed was one of the main issues because, of course, depending how fast the truck was going, we could determine whether the truck was able to go through the curve without crossing the double yellow line. And that GPS was on the truck, but the company denied it and said that they never had it, and they've verified under oath that they never had it, and then it turned out that they did have it. But there's been a lot of attempts by the trucking company to conceal the truth and misrepresent the way that they operated this company. Did
this figure into the jury's verdict?
I Yes, of course it did. I believe that it made a huge effect on the jury decision and the way that they looked on the case. The jury was very upset, I believe, with the way the trucking company conducted their business. It was not a small trucking company. They had about 50 trucks, gasoline trucks, that were transporting gasoline all over the county and in California, even Southern California. And they basically, the safety of the people was not something that they concerned themselves with.
Yeah.
There were the gasoline trucking companies should make the safety is #1 priority, because obviously this is very, very dangerous business that they have. It's a rolling bomb, as we called it, and you have to be very careful, and you have to choose the most safest way to do your job. And of course, a jury understood that their work is very important, but it's also very important to do it safely. And when the jury realized that safety was not something they concerned themselves with, the owner of the company testified and clearly misrepresented the truth, and the person who was in charge of the safety procedures was somebody who did not appear very credible. Jury was very upset, and jury actually didn't understand why they were not allowed to award punitive damages against the company, because at the end of the case, it took 4 weeks to present this case to the jury. The jury really wanted the company to stop doing business in California.
Yeah. Now, are you allowed to disclose what the verdict was?
I am allowed to disclose what the verdict was, and the verdict was almost $4.9 million, and 25% of it was reduced by 25% because the jury found that that Mr. De Silva was 25% responsible for this incident.
Yeah. One of the most unusual approaches that you and other successful attorneys have when you prosecute cases, when you represent people like this, you not only tell the story of the person that got hurt, but you also tell the story of the individual or the organization that is out there operating unsafely, right? So that the jury can identify with maybe they could be the next victim, right, of this company unless things change, correct?
And yes, we want the jury is. We think that being on a jury is it's a privilege, and it's very powerful. And the jury's verdict actually do force companies to make changes. And I truly believe that this verdict forced this company to change the way they operated. And I think when you talk about a particular incident, you can't just focus on what happened at that particular moment when somebody got hurt. You need to see as to how did we get there? How did it happen that we have this fatigued and tired driver who's been working many, many hours before that, who is, didn't have a chance to have his lunch? Why is he driving this very long gasoline truck at the rush hour on Saturday when the company knows this is the time when you have a lot of bicyclists and motorcyclists? It's a weekend. It's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. Why do you? How did we put this truck on that road? And it's the most dangerous time that you can possibly find with the driver who is tired and exhausted. And so this is very important that we look at as to what decisions led to this particular moment. And of course, those decisions are not made by the driver. Those decisions are made by the people who are in charge. Yeah.
Now, since you both handle a lot of personal injury claims, motorcycle accidents frequently are some of the cases you handle. What should a person do if they're in a motorcycle accident, the first thing? If they're able to.
Right. Well, I think definitely the first thing is they need to make sure that they're either fine physically or they should get medical attention right away.
Right.
Don't go to the lawyer right away. Get to the hospital or get medical attention right away.
I think it's important to emphasize when you were talking about talking with Clayton's friends to find out the truth. When someone comes to you with a case like this does not cost them any money to discuss the case, prosecute the case, unless you win. Yeah, and then you have a contingency fee and that sort of thing. Because a lot of people don't realize that when they think lawyers, I got to pay a lot of money.
Well, in fact, if we lost that particular case, and that case cost a significant amount of money to prosecute. As you can imagine, we had a lot of experts and witnesses, and if we lost that case, Mr. Da Silva wouldn't have had to pay anything to us. This is the risk that personal injury attorneys take, and that's why people like Mr. Da Silva and all of my clients are able to actually prosecute their cases. I truly believe that if we didn't have the contingency system, most of the people wouldn't have an ability to receive justice.
Right. You brought up a very interesting point when you said being on a jury is a privilege. From the country that you come from, Russia,
correct.
You do not have jury trials like this, correct?
Not in the civil cases.
Yeah.
We don't. We do in criminal cases, and it's not the same, and it's very limited, and judges actually have a majority of say in determining the verdicts and sentencing, etc.
Yeah. So despite the challenges that you may have in a case, this still is probably a really good system to get justice, right? Right here in America.
I believe that the jury system is an incredible system, and I think this is why this country is so amazing, because we do have people who actually make decisions on election, make decisions and everyday jury trials. I couldn't even imagine what would have happened if we had a judge or even panel of judges making those decisions. Because the jury is very smart, and as a trial lawyer, I can tell you that I've learned a long time ago that they always do at the end, you always get, the truth comes out. The jury is actually, we think that they make mistakes, and there are some attorneys who are disappointed with the verdicts, but the truth of the matter is that the jurors have a good intuition, and they always seem to understand what the issues are more than we even can imagine. And they always, at the end, I find that the juries strive to do the right thing. And it is very empowering.
Well, you guys did, and you did a great job on this case. And if I was ever injured in San Francisco, I'd be calling you.
I hope so, but I don't want you to get ever hurt.
No, I don't plan on it. And thank you very much for being on our program. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at InsiderExclusive.com.